I went into season 2 of Squid Game with pretty low expectations. I was just expecting a lazy cash grab, but it's kind of late for that since it's been 3 years since the first season became a global sensation. And with the way the world moves these days, 3 years may as well be prehistoric. Point is, though, I expected it to just be bad, but it's not. It is actually good. Now, I do need to spoil a little something here. There's no Jim Wool, which is a damn shame. That's a big missed opportunity because Jim Wool is almost synonymous with Squid Game at this point. He is a natural disaster, the devil himself in the Roblox Squid Game circuit, and I really thought that they would tip their hat to Jim Wool in season 2 here, but they did not. What they did do, though, is not just do the same thing again, which is what I expected. What I really thought season 2 would be is they just do nothing but games. The same games and then maybe some new games. I just thought it'd just be nothing but games out the wazoo like we're playing fucking Mario Party. But it's not, which was a pleasant surprise. There is a huge emphasis on games. Pretty much anytime some big moment happens, it's part of a game. Like even when it's them hunting the recruiter down, it ends in a game. So there is a lot of that, and they're all good, and they are different. There is only one return game. So that was nice. I once again expected them just to do the greatest hits again. Now that's what I call Squid Game Volume 2, basically. Fucking Kids Bop Squid Game, the second rodeo. They didn't. That's nice. Now, I don't think Season 2 has a chance of reaching the same heights that Season 1 did. That was lightning in a bottle, in the truest sense of the word. It came out at an unprecedented time where everyone was inside, and there was nothing like this out. Of course, there's still a ton of hype for Season 2, but I don't think it's going to reach that crazy, set the world ablaze popularity that Season 1 had. Though I'm sure it will reignite the Roblox Squid Game circuit, and God rest all the souls that cross paths with Jim Wool. Anyway, though, I do think Season 2 here is good. Very good, even. I went into it expecting it to kind of be dog shitty. Nope, not the case. So, Season 2 is much more of like almost a revenge action show than it is a show about survival by any means necessary through these depraved games. Here, we now see a very different Gi-hun, who, I still don't know if I'm saying that name right. I don't remember if it's Gi-hun or Gi-hun. I'm not entirely sure. Sorry if I butchered the pronunciation. But we see him in a totally different way. He even has his own John Wick arsenal. He is using that money that he won, every fucking penny of it, to try and track down the recruiter so he can go to the games and tear it to pieces. Shut it down for good. He no longer has the red hair that we saw at the end of Season 1. I suppose the director said, all right, I was playing a bit of a goof on you. We'll get serious again. So that goes away within the first 3 minutes of episode 1. And we see that he has spent the last 3 years training with the sole focus of stopping these games. So he's really good with guns now, and he is like a very confident leader. So he has people that are searching every subway station every day for 2 years during the summer looking for the recruiter, and he has this network and even gets connections to some military people that will help him try and stop these games. And it's a really cool evolution of the character from Season 1 that feels pretty natural with all of the trauma he went through and everything that he experienced. Him being kind of just broken, but so focused on taking that anger out on the people that caused it is just a really compelling and natural evolution of what we saw from Season 1. And the villain here, the front man that we knew from Season 1, is so good. He is the perfect counter to our hero. And he plays with that, saying so you want to play the hero, I'll show you the consequences, and boy howdy does he ever. I'm not going to get into spoilers for this one. This one is way too fresh to get into spoilers, but I do have a couple of complaints that I won't be able to dive too deep into in a moment. But I do think on the whole, this was much better than I expected and just a really solid Season 2 for something that I thought shouldn't have even had a Season 2 in the first place. Usually when you have a show like Squid Game, I feel like it's best left as just that glorious triumph in the moment that it was, instead of trying to overstay its welcome, extending it to a season 2 just because it was popular. It's always lackluster when that happens. In this case, though, I really think it was handled well. It seems very self-aware in what people expected for season 2, and it gives you that, and then some. So, the iconic red light, green light, that's the first game. So, the show brings you in with the same game, making you think, oh, he's just going to be playing the same shit again. And it even has similar characters that were introduced in season 1. We have characters that are very close to them in season 2, but they go in very different directions and serve a very different purpose. So it's a nice spin on character traits that we saw in season 1 and got fed a bit in season 2 that drastically change in the direction they go. For example, one of Gi-hun's friends is in this game again, but not the same kind of friend we saw in season 1. The next thing I want to mention that might be a big spoiler, but I don't think it is because I'm pretty sure it's in the trailers, but just in case there's a spoiler warning. Do you remember how in season 1 the big twist was that the old man that was with Gi-hun for most of the games was actually the man behind the curtain the whole time, the fucking puppet master that put all the games together? Well, season 2 knows that people are expecting some kind of twist like that, and they play with that expectation by putting the front man in the same position the old man was. But they let you know right away that it's the front man, because we saw him in season 1, and in the very first game, we get to see the front man come into the fold. He's playing the game, and we know that he is the big bad, but nobody in the game does. Gi-hun doesn't know. So that's a really fun way of spinning this, where now the viewer knows who this is, but nobody else does. So you're going through these games and you are watching him participate, and he's playing the games legit. He's not cheating or doing anything shady or underhanded where he's like going off screen and somehow miraculously survives like we saw in season 1 with the old man. He is like even desperate to survive in some of them. Like, I don't want to get into spoilers on how some of the games go or just spoil what some of the games are, but it really seems like he was putting his life on the line, and that's kind of a theme that they drove home within the very first episode with the recruiter, where the recruiter plays Russian roulette with Gi-hun, and they play by the rules. No cheating, nothing that's going to get them VAC banned, no manipulation or underhanded shady tactics, just all textbook, by the book, rule following. Which I think is just really cool and helps to flesh out the theme of the season even more so. So I thought they executed that really well. Now let's get into some of the things I didn't like all that much. Some of the games I just didn't think were that interesting. In the first season, I don't think all the games were hits either. There was definitely some shits. Like they weren't all slam dunks. There were some misses. But here, I felt like some of them were just kind of throwaway, as if the stakes weren't even really there. The second game, for example, there is like this big shocking moment where it's not the same game that we saw in season 1, but the game that replaced it was just like a mishmash of 5 different small games put together, basically like little party trick games almost, and it just didn't even feel that tense. I didn't get the same feeling watching that, where it's like, oh, the characters are in real peril now. This is going to be a super hard one to accomplish, where there's actual dread on all of the characters for even seeing this game and having to play in it. I just didn't get that, really. The game that followed it, I thought, was better. It was definitely a lot more intense. It was able to build a lot more tension and keep things like fucking, chaotic. But it just felt like the games in season 2 played almost too much of a background role. I was hoping it wouldn't be the sole focus of season 2 where it's just the games, but I'm pretty surprised at just how little the games actually play a role in season 2. It's not a focal point, honestly, which I think is going to be disappointing to a lot of people who just like Squid Game for that, the death games. Season 2 has much more of an emphasis on just plain old simple action. Just some lead spraying, some fights, fucking, like it's more action and more about revenge and trying to stop the games by any means necessary. And that usually comes in the form of a firefight. So the games don't play a huge role here. The next thing I didn't really like is there's an entire subplot with that team that Gi-hun puts together where they are constantly trying to find where he's been taken. And every time it cuts to them, it's like useless. It feels like we're just watching filler because they're not getting any closer to finding him. They're just constantly on this wild goose chase and nothing's really getting accomplished there at all. Now, it does set up a very interesting character that we get introduced to in season 2 that has some very it's going to be a spoiler if I get too deep into it. They introduce a character that is clearly going to play a big role in season 3. That's another thing. Season 2 is basically just a setup for season 3. I mean, it's more than that, obviously, but everything in season 2 is building for season 3. So there's a character that's introduced here in that side plot that is doing some real fishy shit that is definitely going to play a big role in the next part. But just, I can only talk about part 2 because that's what's out. Anytime it cut to them, it was just boring. They were not accomplishing anything at all. It just felt like wasted time. I can pretty much summarize an hour's worth of that side plot with just a few sentences. We need to check this island. This might be where the games are being played. Alright, we checked the island. No good. We'll cross that one off and check the next one. Then they get to the next island. Jeepers, it wasn't that island either. Let's check the next one. That is everything that happens every time they're on screen without fail, and it doesn't really get deeper than that, except for that one character I mentioned that starts to do some more things that are clearly going to be a big deal later on. But as of now, they're not. It's just, try another, try another, try another. Eventually we'll find the island. Try another. And they just go on this deep sea adventure of just going to fucking island after island after island to no avail. So it's just, it feels just really useless. The other thing I also just didn't like, and this is less about the actual content of Season 2 and more so just this trend with dividing things into parts. Since this is clearly part 1 of 2 parts where Season 2 is really a lot of setup for Season 3, there are just so many things in here and so many characters that feel highly underutilized with no actual point that they get to in this show that feels like it fits. So they introduce one of the shooters for the Squid Game. We get to see, from their perspective, someone who actually kills the contestants in there. We get to see a little about them outside of the game and inside of the game and the things they go through, which is a cool concept and something that's a fun thing to explore because you get to see a different side of it. Even though you did get to see a lot of it in Season 1, this is now seeing it from someone who is actively killing the people in the game. And that character, we do learn a little bit about, not a ton, but we get a bit, and we see that they're going through some shit while doing this job, but the character doesn't really do anything in the season. It's just, we get like glimpses of a different perspective every now and then. But there's nothing narratively that we get from the character that pushes anything forward or really changes anything. It feels like it's clearly going to matter a lot in Season 3, but that's what I'm talking about. When you're just breaking something up into parts, you get things that are half-baked like that. And that just always kind of bothers me a bit. I'm really getting tired of the trend of breaking things in half because then you only get half of like the whole package that you need to now wait X amount of time for, probably like a year. It just feels disjointed. I'm getting really over that trend. I'd rather just wait for the whole thing to come out. Because usually when you do a season, you know, like a full season, things wrap themselves up and storylines reach some level of closure. Of course, they don't need to be fully finished by any means if you're going for more seasons that are planned. Like, I think Game of Thrones always did a good job before, of course, it absolutely shit the bed with season 7 and 8. But it always did a good job of a whole season feeling like, oh, you got a whole complete package that is going to have more going forward. Whereas in a case like this, you just feel like you got half of the package and you have to wait for the next one to get the whole thing. So that's just starting to bother me a little bit. That's not even like exclusive to Squid Game Season 2 or anything, but you know, it is just getting to be a bit of a nuisance. Like House of the Dragon is the most egregious example where the most recent season is actually just putting chess pieces on the board and not using them. You have to wait for the next season for those pieces to do anything. So fucking like nothing really moves in season 2 at all. It's not nearly as bad in Squid Game season 2 by any means, but there is just obvious things that are just setup pieces that don't actually contribute anything in this season, but will in the next. So it just, again, feels half-baked at the moment. But I know when the whole thing is out, we're going to see the whole vision for it and the role they play. But overall, I do think Season 2 was very solid, much better than I expected it to be. So I definitely do think it's worth watching, and I'm really looking forward to the final season of Squid Game. Assuming, of course, Season 3 is the final season. They might just milk this cow for many, many moons to come. There's probably going to be tons of spin-offs. There's already been one spin-off, too. So they already are showing a track record of having Squid Game as like a flagship IP, but I have to imagine this next season will probably be the last one. I don't even know how they could stretch it further. But anyway, I thought it was good. That's about it. See ya.